Hi, I'm Mel Majoros. I am a 4-year cancer survivor. My blog, The Cancer Warrior, is one of the top 10 breast cancer blogs according to blogs.com. I'm here to bring a fresh, upbeat perspective to a topic that to some may seem scary. A positive mental attitude got me through my cancer, and I hope to share that with you. Today we're talking to Regina Leeds. She's a 9.5-year uterine cancer survivor. She's the Zen Organizer, and she's also a New York Times bestseller. How are you today, Regina?
I'm just wonderful, Mel. How are you?
Great. That's a lot. That's a mouthful. That's a lot of impressive things right there.
Well, you know, in some ways I owe those accomplishments to cancer because when I was diagnosed, I've been a professional organizer for 23 years, but my first profession was as an actress, and I had just written one book when I was diagnosed, and I said to myself, oh my gosh, I can't die because I don't have a lead line yet for my obit.
Right, you don't want to be like, oh yeah, she was an extra on such and such, you know.
Yeah. You know, so now I have my lead line, but I'm not remotely ready to die. So.
Oh, of course not. So take me back 9.5 years ago. I know medicine has changed a whole lot since then. How did you find out?
Well, I had symptoms starting in January, and I went to my acupuncturist. Uterine cancer usually presents with extraordinarily heavy bleeding, and that's what I suddenly had. And we got it under control, but it wouldn't stop. And she said, you have to go to your gynecologist because I don't know what we're dealing with. I don't know why I can't get this to stop, and I need to know you don't have cancer. And I went.
And you were like, what? But okay.
Oh, no. I mean, listen, I'm a vegetarian. I exercise regularly. I'm a yogi. I meditate. Cancer was never anywhere in my consciousness. I thought I had a past because I did, quote unquote, all the right things.
Yeah, that doesn't happen,
and,
unfortunately.
So I went to my doctor, and I don't know what to say about him. I won't mention his name. He clearly had issues with my being involved with alternative medicine, which I am much more devoted to than Western medicine. That's just my life choice. And so he told me that we did an ultrasound in the office, and he said, well, you have a polyp. And the polyp is 99% benign, you know, he wanted to do a D&C and take it out. And I said, well, I know that Chinese medicine has a high success rate with fibroids. Do you mind if I research and see what I can do with a polyp? Is it safe? And anyway.
And then he sighed.
What?
And then he went.
Yes, he sighed, and he said, well, if you want to deal with the bleeding and the mess, yeah, you can do that. And later on I found out, it was very interesting, I was led to this extraordinary physician who became a client of mine, and in the course of organizing her, I saw her quite a bit. She just asked, she was an OBGYN, and she asked me one day casually, she said, well, you know, how did this go on so long that you were third stage? And I told her what happened, and she said, okay, when a patient presents in the office with heavy bleeding, and I actually kept my ultrasound, and she looked at it, she said, all I know is from this ultrasound is that you have a mass in your uterus. No one on planet Earth would know whether this was a fibroid, a polyp, or as it was, a tumor.
Right.
So I was not handled appropriately, and then I had these incredible cramps, and finally I just said, you know, I've gotten the bleeding to stop, but I can't stop the cramps. Let's just go in and do the D&C and get this polyp out. And, of course, the day after surgery, he called me in the morning and said those words no one wants to hear. You know, I'm sorry, it's cancer.
Wow.
And, yeah.
He called you? He didn't want you in his office?
No, it was just, in my mind, I remember it being a Saturday morning, but I can't say that for sure. Okay. The surgery was July 26th, and so it would have been July 27. It'll be 10 years this July, so whatever day. No, he did it over the phone. He was...
wow.
he was consistent in being incredibly cruel to me. It went on in after my hysterectomy in the hospital. The next morning, and by God's grace, I had somebody sleep in my room that night because, you just don't want to be alone in a hospital.
Oh, no.
And I remember him, I was still groggy, and he was standing over me, and he seemed like Mr. Doom and Gloom. And to add a little levity, which is the way I handle things, I said, well, I guess I can cancel those plans for my 100th birthday party. And he looked at me and he said, oh, no, you'll be dead in 2 to 5 years. And I believed him because I had no reason not to, and it really put me into a tailspin. And it was a few months later, I had 2 extraordinary oncologists, and I would mention them by name if you wanted, because they are just 2 of the finest doctors and finest men in the profession. They were so extraordinary to me. And I was talking to one of them, and I said, can I ask you a question without mentioning names? If I told you that someone said to me I would be dead in 2 to 5 years, what would you say to that? And he looked at me and he said, well, I would never say that. And I would say no one had a right to say that to you. It's not statistically true. So I wouldn't hold on to that if I were you.
Exactly.
And that was my clue that everything that had been done for me by my OBGYN was not correct. I mean, I called the office one day when I was having these cramps, and I asked his nurse, I don't know, do you think it's still safe to wait because these cramps are pretty bad? And she said, oh, yeah, that's just the polyp getting bigger. Don't worry about it. Well, something was getting bigger, but it wasn't a polyp. It wasn't a benign polyp. And, it's not funny, and it wasn't funny at the time, but I harbor no resentments. I'm not angry with him because I believe in karma. And I believe when you do things to other people and you do it with malicious intent, which in my mind clearly this was, it comes back to you. I don't have to take care of it or worry about it.
I agree, and you're the perfect person when I tell people you have the right to fire your doctor, because a lot of people don't, they worry that they don't want to hurt their doctor's feelings or whatever, but you know what?
Mel, thank you for saying that. Yes, he had been my doctor for 18 years, and I believed he walked on water. And what I would say to any woman diagnosed with cancer is no matter how much you love your doctor, get a second opinion.
Exactly.
And I will say that all the women in my life urged me to get a second opinion, and I did not listen to them because I said, oh, but he's been my doctor for 18 years, and he's my friend, and he's so brilliant. I know he's right. And he was not. And no matter how bright, no matter how close you are to your doctor, you need a second opinion. It'll be very comforting. And I think it's also important to find out how different hospitals will handle the care for any particular cancer. I know now, not that I would have been able to go there, but I know that Anderson in Houston is probably the finest cancer hospital in the country.
Oh, yes.
The City of Hope in Duarte, I've actually worked there as an organizer, and I can tell you, having been behind the scenes, every person who works there, from the janitor to the most celebrated scientist, cares deeply about every person being treated there. I've never been to a hospital like the City of Hope. It's extraordinary.
Is that where you went for your treatment?
No, I didn't. I was at Cedars-Sinai.
Oh, okay. So now, did you do both Western medicine and Eastern medicine?
Yes, I did. I had to have a total abdominal hysterectomy with staging for cancer. And the staging for cancer means that after they snip out all your female organs, they move your other organs around. They're looking for tumors. And then I had 6 rounds of chemotherapy, and I had Taxol and carboplatin. And
those are fun. I had those.
Yes, Taxol is a really joyous experience.
Yes. One of my fingernails still has like a line of brown on it.
Oh, how many rounds of it did you have?
12.
Oh my. Well, concurrent with my Western treatments, I did acupuncture, and I also, which I have done for over 20 years, and I also, the Chinese, Chinese medicine is 5,000 years old, and they have textbooks written about different stages of cancer and how to treat it. And there are actually in Chinese medicine over 100 anti-cancer drugs, anti-cancer herbs, which function like chemotherapy. They kill cancer cells. And so I drank a tea every day that was put together for me by my doctor, whom I revere, and it was partially anti-cancer, and it was also tonic herbs, because, as you know so well, chemotherapy just brings you to your knees.
Yes, it does.
And so I constantly needed something that helped put me back together. And I also did network chiropractic treatments, which are non-force manipulation. And I never stopped exercising. Now, needless to say, I wasn't running a marathon, which I didn't do when I was healthy.
Right.
But I walked 3 miles every day.
Oh, that's good.
During chemo, I would take off a week, and then I would go back to walking. And by the end, I couldn't do 3 miles. I could knock out a mile. And I wasn't setting any records. But my goal, I had so many positive nodes, and I was at the beginning of the 3rd stage, so the odds weren't in my favor. But I felt that I would do these treatments, but I would not tell people. I had a very small group of people in my life who knew, and they were extraordinary to me. I actually didn't know how much I was loved until I got cancer.
I know, isn't that amazing?
It's incredibly amazing. I thought you had to be married and have children to be loved. I don't know where I got that. I thought, well, your friends love you, but not like that, not like family. And there was a group of people that were right there. I never wanted for anything, when I needed a ride to the doctor, when I needed someone to stay in my hospital room. I was just covered and loved, and it was incredible. But I decided just to go ahead with my life and not tell the people I was working with. Now, I had to stop working with clients because I'm usually on my feet with clients 8 hours a day, and I could not during chemo. I didn't have that kind of stamina. But I wrote 2 books, and I prepped a TV show that I shot about a month after I finished chemo.
What?
So wow. I would say, as I said to you before we went on the air, in Chinese medicine, they say the person who has a reason to live, who has to keep working, usually fares better than the one who can just sit home and think about how bad they feel. So it was a blessing. And I think the most invaluable piece of advice I can share, is something that was said to me, I think it was about a week after I was diagnosed, and I was still reeling. And I asked my friends, I said, I want to talk to someone, more than one if I can, to women who have survived uterine cancer. There was just something about talking to my sisters who had survived what I was about to face, what I wanted to. Everybody kept telling me, well, chemotherapy, it's hard. And I thought, would somebody describe it to me, please, and tell me what it's like? And, so I found one woman, and I sadly do not remember her name. It was a woman in New York, and she talked to me on the phone. And she said something to me that at the time I thought was just crazy. And later on I thought it moves me to tears now. It was almost a spiritual message. It was the whole point of the whole journey. She said to me, right now you think cancer is doing things to you. One day you will find out it is doing things through you and for you.
Oh, that's true. That's very true.
And that was the most profound, beautiful thing that was said to me, and I honor her for that, and I pass it along to everybody. I truly believe that in the midst of the worst experience, there is a gift. cancer made me a better person. I always thought, I made jokes about it. I said, I'm a devout coward. You know, I'm not the person you could torture to get secrets, and I would keep my mouth shut. You know, you hear all those stories of incredibly brave men and women in battle who get captured by the enemy and say nothing. I always said, you'd have to get a stenographer. I'll tell you anything you want to hear. Please don't hurt me. But it takes courage to show up for chemotherapy. It takes courage to show up for surgery when you don't know what the outcome will be. And I discovered that I was not, in fact, a coward. I discovered that I was loved, and it was very interesting. I gave a party for everybody who helped me because they didn't know each other. And from the person who ran my errands to the people who drove me to the sainted people who sat in my hospital room with me, I wanted them all to meet, and I had a champagne brunch for them.
That's a great idea.
And they all thanked me. And they said what a privilege it was to take this journey with you. And it just never occurred to me that anybody would feel that way. So, and the other thing I've learned, and I talk about my cancer, and I mention it in every public forum. I talk about it in all my books because I want people to know it is not necessarily a death sentence. And it's not just people like Lance Armstrong who can beat it. You can do it. If I can do it. And the other thing I want to say is, in addition to alternative medicine, I was also deeply involved in therapy, and I also have a spiritual teacher. And both my spiritual teacher and my therapist worked with me because it's only my personal belief that I must have had a belief system in place that brought this to me, and what this was an opportunity to heal that belief system. And that's what I went after to change. What do I feel, if you will, erroneously about that I could shift and be healthy again?
Right.
And that's just my belief system. And I think when you take responsibility, you know, in my books I say take responsibility for your messy house, not so that you should feel guilty, but so you will be empowered. If I created this, whatever it is, then I bet I'm in a position to fix it, to do something different. It's not a punishment. And then even, you know, Mel, this is the way I felt. I'm going to go on with my life. I'm going to do the treatments. And if I live, that'll be great. And if I don't, then all I wanted was a conscious death. I didn't want to die angry or bitter. It was a shock to me that it was a possibility, but I thought, let me be grateful for the time I've had and let me leave, you know, with grace. And I'm very... At the 7-year mark, they told me I was cured, so I still go back once a year for my regular checkup, and I'm just grateful.
It's so awesome that you have. I still go every 6 months, and I just went to the doctor, and, you know, being under 5 years, there's always that thought, way back in my mind, but, you know, just being that far out, 9.5 years, and, you know, ridiculously, a doctor telling you that he didn't expect to see you 2 to 5 years later. Would you ever go back to see him and be like, how's it going?
Would I ever go back to that OBGYN?
Not as a patient, but just like, be like, oh yeah, 10 years later, how's it going?
Stand and
you're a little.
And say, no, you know what I do whenever I see my oncologist for my checkup, he doesn't remember, you know, what went on. He's a great doctor, and he's world famous, and he's got lots of patients. So I always say, oh, have you seen Dr. So-and-so? Please give him my best. That's my way of letting him know I'm still here. And I did write a letter to the medical board.
Oh, okay, that's good.
And I also wrote a letter to the head of Cedars-Sinai. And I was directed to do that by a friend who is a physician. And he said at the hospital what they will do is they will form a committee to examine him and your complaint. And you'll never know what happens, but they said when that happens to a doctor, it's humiliating. And so what happened there, I will never know. The medical board wrote me a letter and said they interviewed him, and I was in effect lying. It was his position that I was angry that I had been diagnosed with cancer, and I was taking it out on him. And I called the doctor who helped me craft the letter, and I said, I can't believe it. And I read her the letter, and she said, Regina, it doesn't matter what they believe. You were a witness for the truth, and now you can go on. And because she said to me, would you like to sue him for malpractice? And I said, no. I said, first of all, I don't want to live in this energy of cancer for longer than I have to.
Right.
And I said, second of all, there is no amount of money that you could give me that would compensate me for having gone through chemotherapy. There's no money. It's the worst experience in the world. It's disgusting. You can't pay me for that. I said, what I'm concerned about are the women who follow me into his office. They are my sisters. And I want to open his mind and to have him be a better doctor. That's what I want. I want to help save their lives. And she said to me, then I will help you. That's the right reason. And she said, I feel that you will be fine if you write this letter, and I'm worried about you if you don't. And so I wrote it, and I was shocked by the response. But, the white coats and people in many professions stick together to protect their own, and that's their business.
Right.
Doesn't belong to me. I wrote my letter. I told them what happened, and that's it.
And you tell the story to other people who may believe a doctor when they say you have X amount of time to live. And I tell people milk has expiration dates. People don't.
Absolutely.
So you can't, if the doctor really knew, if he was that psychic, then he should be in Vegas playing, Super Bowl's coming up. That's, that's what I'm saying. But
absolutely.
So how did you go to being a Zen organizer? How did that all come about?
Well, I was an actress, and there was actually a 2-year period when I worked all the time. I didn't do anything that made me rich or famous, but I was recurring on a soap opera, and I had, I did 4 national commercials, and I was working, but it wasn't fulfilling. And what I realized was, and it was all I ever wanted to be from the time I was 5, but I realized that when you are an actor, in many ways, you are in the position of being a child. You're waiting for somebody to call you in to audition. You are waiting for that role that is the right role for you. And I wanted to do something that I was in charge of. And so I just kept thinking, well, what could I do? And I had worked with Jonathan Winters.
Oh,
and he said to me, Regina, he said, you have to make your neuroses pay. I'm crazy, and I make $1 million a year because of it. And that stuck in my mind, and, I thought about that for actually 10 years, and I thought, well, what am I neurotic about that anybody would pay me for? And one day, it was January 23 years ago, I know where I was, I remember the moment, and it just came to me. I said, oh my God, I'm neurotic about being organized. That's what I could do for other people. And 23 years ago, I think there were 4 books in the marketplace about it. Now everybody's a professional organizer, and everybody's got a book. It's a totally different world. But I just realized that was my calling, and I contacted a friend, and I said, it's one thing for me to be organized. I don't know if I can do it for somebody else. That's a whole separate skill, and I needed to know if I had that. And I called her, and I went over, and I said, now you have to pay me something so you'll keep this will be serious to you.
Right.
And you have an investment in it. And I discovered that, yes, not only could I organize other people, but that I could teach them how to do it.
That's awesome.
And then for the first 3 years, every night, I couldn't sleep the night before I worked with somebody. And it was all word of mouth. I was so lucky. And after 3 years, I realized, it's all the same. I go through the same 3 steps, no matter who I'm organizing, no matter what their socioeconomic level, no matter whether it's the garage or the kitchen or the closet. It's the same 3 things. So I called those 3 steps the magic formula. And they are eliminate categorize, and then organize.
So now how many books do you, I know you have one coming up, and I do want to talk about the Search Dog Foundation before we run out of time. How many books do you have?
My 9th book is coming out in May, and it's called The 8-Minute Organizer. And it's my homage to all those people who look at my 1 Year 2 series. 1 Year to an Organized Life was my New York Times bestseller, and then from that came a series. There's Work Life, Financial Life, and I have a book for pregnant women, 1 Year to an Organized Life with Baby, which really helps you organize your physical environment and your clothing. You can get ready for that baby and not be behind the 8 ball when you're in the hospital in labor. And I wrote it with a wonderful woman who's the mother of 5, and she's just extraordinary. But a lot of people, their eyes glaze over when they hear these 1 Year 2 titles, and they say, oh, no, I can't do that. And I wanted to write something that would give them the ability to experience why there are some of us who love to get organized and appreciate the impact it has on our lives. And it's a book of 8-minute projects. Some of them are 8 minutes or under. Some of them are exactly 8 minutes. And then some are a little more ambitious in case you catch the fever of organizing. And then I break a bigger project down into 8-minute segments that you can do over time. And so that's my homage to them.
Nice. And quickly, because we are almost out of time, how did you get involved with the Search Dog Foundation, which is a great organization?
New York is my hometown, and I had the privilege of being home for 9/11, and I say privilege because that's where I would want to be when something like that happens to my hometown. And I had never, ever seen search and rescue dogs before. There they were every night on the news working the rubble. It was extraordinary. And I heard the word FEMA certified, and I thought that meant that the government trains them and certifies them, and it doesn't. They are all trained privately, and to me, the state-of-the-art organization that trains them is the Search and Rescue Dog Foundation in Ojai, and I've been working with them for 10 years, and one of the things I love about them is the incredibly kind way the animals are treated. Most of these dogs they're taken out of shelters. This is the dog who gets turned in because it's too high energy for a family. But that drive, that energy is exactly what a working dog needs. And if a dog fails a program or if it stays in and retires, it is never, ever, ever cast away. It is taken care of for life. And I'm a serious animal person, and all of those things were important to me. And so they've had my contributions, my love, my devotion. I speak for them, and I hope book number 10 will be a book about them. I'm trying to sell that now.
Oh, excellent. And I don't see how that wouldn't sell.
I'm sorry?
I said I don't see how that wouldn't sell. The Search Dog Foundation. But that's just me.
I think it will sell once it's in the marketplace, but, I have to get a publisher behind it, and I'm just hoping that Perseus, who's done my last 5 books, I hope that they will be interested, because I have to say I've had 3 publishers, and Perseus is the gold standard. Everybody there cares deeply on every level about the book you're writing, and they continue to market it long after the publication date, and that's just unheard of. And I revere them, and I hope I get to stay with them, and they continue to be my publishing family.
I'm sure they will. Well, how can people reach you on the internet or whatnot?
Well, the best way they can reach me is to actually go to Facebook, which is such a vibrant, interactive community, and just go to Regina Leeds, the Zen Organizer, and you can leave me a note, and I will get back to you. You can go to reginaleeds.com, and you can email me from there. I answer all my email. I'm the only one who sees it. Or you can go to Twitter and find the Zen Organizer.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Regina, for joining us today. Hang on, I'm going to wrap up like I usually do. This is The Cancer Warrior. You can always find me on Facebook because I am a Facebook junkie, Mel Majoros. You can also become a fan of the show, The Cancer Warrior, on EmpireRadio.com. Check out my blog, thecancerwarrior.blogspot.com. And as always, life looks pretty good from where I'm sitting. Sending you good vibes, it's The Cancer Warrior on EmpireRadio.com.